candlelight flickered across the tablecloth as I pushed back my chair, the evening apparently reaching its natural end after 3 hours of conversation I hadn't wanted to stop. "I should probably head home," I said, standing. Elena's hand caught my forearm before I'd taken a single step, her fingers warm, her eyes carrying something I hadn't seen from her in the 4 months since we'd become neighbors. She leaned close enough that candlelight caught the small tremor in her breath. "Stay a little longer," she whispered. Slowly, I sat back down, understanding that whatever this evening had actually been about, it wasn't finished yet. My name is Daniel, and I'd moved into the townhouse beside Elena Marchetti's 4 months before that particular candlelit dinner, relocating across the city following a divorce that had finalized after nearly a year of exhausting but increasingly amicable negotiations. Widowed at 46 after 12 years in that townhouse, Elena had lost her husband Marco to a sudden heart attack 2 years earlier. Both her adult children had already moved out by then, leaving her navigating grief in a house built for more people than currently lived in it. Polite distance defined our first weeks, brief waves at the mailbox, small talk about neighborhood maintenance, nothing suggesting the connection that would eventually develop between us. Architect at a mid-size firm downtown, I had the kind of demanding creative career that left little energy for actively pursuing new social connections during those first difficult months adjusting to single life after 11 years of marriage. Elena taught Italian at a nearby high school, though her real passion for cooking was obvious to anyone who shared a fence with her. The aromas drifting between our adjacent townhouses made that evident within the first week. Friendship arrived accidentally, nearly 6 weeks after my initial move, when a summer storm knocked out power throughout our entire block, leaving both of us without air conditioning during a brutal July evening. That shared inconvenience became the unexpected catalyst for a friendship neither of us anticipated, one that would gradually deepen into something considerably more meaningful over the following months. "I have a generator," Elena called over our shared fence, noticing me struggling with warm groceries I'd just purchased before the power failure complicated my evening. "Nothing fancy, but enough to keep things cold if you need to store anything." "That's incredibly generous," I said, "though I don't want to impose." "It's not an imposition," she said. "I'm making dinner regardless. The generator's already running from my own refrigerator. You might as well join me rather than eating cold sandwiches alone in a dark apartment." Practical rather than romantic, that first invitation became our first shared meal. Elena's homemade pasta considerably more impressive than anything I could have produced even with functioning electricity. "This is incredible," I said, genuinely impressed. "My grandmother's recipe," Elena said. "Though I've adjusted it slightly over the years, she'd probably be horrified by my modifications." Easy, unforced conversation that evening planted the foundation for regular dinner invitations over the following weeks. Invitations that gradually revealed depths to both our lives neither of us had initially expected to share. Weekly at first, Elena's dinner invitations gradually increased in frequency as our conversations moved beyond neighborly pleasantries into genuinely personal territory. "How are you adjusting to single life?" Elena asked, during one dinner about 6 weeks into our friendship. I remember how disorienting that transition felt after Marco passed. "Honestly, still figuring it out," I admitted. 11 years of marriage creates habits that don't simply disappear because the legal paperwork's finalized. I still sometimes reach for my phone to text my ex-wife about mundane things before remembering that's no longer appropriate. "That sounds familiar," Elena said. Though my situation was different, obviously, Marco didn't choose to leave. Some mornings I still wake up and momentarily forget he's gone, reaching for him before reality catches up. Mutual acknowledgement of grief, though carrying different origins, created an immediate depth of understanding that felt more meaningful than typical new neighbor friendship usually produces. "How long did it take before things felt normal again?" I asked. "After Marco's death. Honestly, I'm not sure normal ever fully returns," she said. "You just develop a new version of normal, one that includes the absence as part of its structure rather than something you're constantly trying to overcome." "A remarkably wise way to frame it," I said. 2 years of grief therapy will do that," Elena said, laughing slightly despite the heavy topic. "Though I appreciate you asking directly rather than avoiding it the way most new acquaintances do once they learn I'm widowed." Subsequent dinners kept deepening the conversation, both of us gradually revealing details typical neighbor relationships rarely explore. My complicated relationship with my ex-wife's family. Elena's navigation of her adult children's opinions about her continued singlehood. Small, vulnerable admissions that built real intimacy despite our relatively brief acquaintance. Growing closeness would face its first real test, nearly 3 months in, when Elena's daughter visited unexpectedly during one of our regular dinners, revealing family dynamics neither of us had yet addressed directly. "Mom?" Sophia, Elena's 26-year-old daughter, called out, letting herself into the townhouse with the easy familiarity of someone who'd grown up in that space. "I wanted to drop off. Oh, I didn't realize you had company." Elena's expression carried visible surprise at the unannounced arrival. "Sophia, this is Daniel, my neighbor." "Daniel, my daughter Sophia." "Nice to meet you," I said, standing, though Sophia's expression carried careful evaluation rather than simple, polite greeting. "Neighbor," Sophia repeated, glancing between the candles Elena had lit and the clearly intimate dinner setting. "That's nice." Sophia's obvious skepticism about the nature of our relationship would require careful handling over the following weeks, as both Elena and I processed how our friendship might affect her existing family dynamics. "It's exactly what it looks like," Elena said, her tone carrying gentle firmness. "Two neighbors sharing dinner and honest friendship." "Of course," Sophia said, though her expression suggested lingering doubt. "I just dropped off some paperwork you needed to sign. I'll leave you two to your dinner." Visible tension remained in the room once she'd gone, our previously comfortable conversation now carrying awareness of family complications neither of us had fully anticipated. "I'm sorry about that," Elena said. "Sophia's been protective since Marco passed, understandably concerned about anyone potentially taking advantage of my grief." "I understand that instinct," I said, "though I hope she doesn't genuinely believe I'm here for anything except honest friendship. I think she's just adjusting to the idea that I might eventually want something beyond simple friendship," Elena said, her tone carrying something I couldn't immediately identify. Her comment lingered with me longer than the immediate context probably warranted, though I didn't press for clarification during that particular evening. Subtle shifts appeared in how Elena approached our time together over the following weeks. Slightly more elaborate meal preparation, careful attention to ambiance that exceeded casual neighbor dinners, small details suggesting real intentionality. "You've been putting more effort into these dinners lately," I observed, during one evening about 4 months into our friendship, noticing candles and carefully selected wine that exceeded our earlier, more casual gatherings. That observation prompted a response revealing exactly how far her own feelings had developed throughout our regular dinners. Feelings she'd apparently been carefully considering how to address. "I suppose I have," Elena admitted, vulnerability visible in her expression. "I've been trying to figure out how to say something without making our friendship feel awkward if you don't share similar feelings." "What kind of feelings?" I asked, genuinely curious despite already suspecting the general direction. "I think I've developed something beyond simple friendship toward you," Elena said carefully, "which terrifies me somewhat, given everything complicated about starting something new after Marco, given Sophia's obvious skepticism, given my own uncertainty about whether I'm actually ready for this kind of vulnerability again." Sitting with her admission for a moment, I processed feelings I'd been carefully avoiding examining too directly throughout our months of deepening friendship. "I think I felt something similar," I admitted, though I've been telling myself it was simply appreciation for genuine friendship during a difficult transition in my own life. Mutual acknowledgement created an immediate, complicated question about what came next for two people who'd built real connection through months of careful friendship rather than typical romantic pursuit. "What do we do with this?" Elena asked, given everything surrounding both our situations. "I don't know exactly," I admitted, though I don't think ignoring it feels honest anymore, given how meaningful these past 4 months have become. For the remainder of that particular dinner, we sat with that new awareness, conversation flowing with the weight of what we'd acknowledged, though neither of us rushed toward defining exactly what this connection meant practically. 3 weeks later, Elena invited me for what she described as an important dinner, her tone carrying enough weight that I understood this evening would require addressing our acknowledged feelings more directly. Carefully prepared with obvious intentionality, that dinner would become the evening that finally revealed how far our friendship had transformed. Through a moment neither of us had specifically planned, but that felt inevitable given everything we'd already acknowledged. Arriving to find her dining room transformed, candles arranged thoughtfully, wine already breathing, a meal clearly prepared with considerably more effort than our typical casual dinners. I felt the weight of what this evening was actually about. "This looks beautiful," I said, moved by the obvious care she'd invested. "I wanted tonight to feel meaningful," Elena admitted. "Given what we discussed a few weeks ago, I thought we deserved an evening specifically dedicated to figuring out what comes next." Slowly we ate, conversation carrying real warmth alongside awareness of the evening's purpose, both of us gradually building toward whatever conversation waited beneath our familiar dynamic. "Can I ask you something directly?" I said as we finished our meal, candlelight flickering between us. "Of course." That direct question opened into exactly the honest conversation both of us had been building toward throughout months of careful, gradually deepening connection. "Are you ready for this?" I asked. Not just intellectually acknowledging feelings, but actually ready to pursue something serious given everything complicated about Marco's memory, about Sophia's concerns, about starting something new after everything you've survived. A long pause before she answered, her expression carrying real reflection rather than immediate reassurance. "I think I am," she said finally. "Though I won't pretend this doesn't feel simultaneously exciting and terrifying." "I understand that duality completely," I said. "I feel it too, given my own recent divorce and uncertainty about pursuing something serious again so soon." "Maybe that shared uncertainty is actually reassuring," Elena said. "Neither of us is rushing carelessly into this, we're both approaching it with real consideration for what it actually means." Conversation carried us through dessert, both of us processing the weight of officially acknowledging our relationship's serious potential, though neither of us had yet moved beyond discussing feelings into any physical acknowledgement of that shift. As the evening naturally wound toward its conclusion, uncertainty about how to properly end this dinner would resolve itself through Elena's own unexpected action. Sensing the evening reaching its typical conclusion point, I pushed back my chair, preparing to offer my usual gratitude and goodnight. "I should probably head home," I said, standing from the table. Elena's hand caught my forearm before I'd taken a single step, her fingers warm against my skin, her expression carrying something I hadn't previously witnessed from her during our months of comfortable friendship. She leaned close enough that the candlelight caught the small, nervous tremor in her breath. "Stay a little longer," she whispered. Slowly I sat back down, understanding that whatever this particular evening had been building toward, it wasn't finished with a simple good night. "Elena," I said quietly, "are you certain about this?" That question hung between us, requiring real reflection given everything about this specific moment, a moment that would determine whether our carefully built friendship actually transformed into something more permanent. "I've been certain for weeks," Elena admitted. "I just didn't know how to bridge the gap between acknowledging feelings and actually acting on them until this exact moment arrived, and I couldn't let you simply walk away without saying something." Together, at that candlelit table for a long moment, both processing the shift our evening had just taken, before Elena spoke again, her voice carrying careful vulnerability. "I need to tell you something honestly," she said. "This is the first time since Marco died that I've felt ready to consider building something real with someone else. That readiness terrifies me, but I don't want fear to prevent me from pursuing something that feels authentically right." "I feel similarly," I admitted, "though my fear carries different origins, given my own recent divorce rather than loss through death. Both of us are navigating real vulnerability tonight, regardless of our different paths toward this moment." Shared vulnerability, despite different origins, created exactly the foundation of understanding that would carry our relationship through its earliest, most uncertain weeks. Another hour of conversation followed, shifting from careful discussion of feelings into real planning for what an actual relationship might practically require, given our status as immediate neighbors and the family dynamics already surfacing through Sophia's obvious skepticism. "I think we need to tell Sophia directly," I said, "rather than letting her draw her own conclusions based on candlelit dinners she happens to witness." "You're right," Elena agreed, "though I'm genuinely nervous about her reaction, given how protective she's been since Marco passed." "Would it help if I was present for that conversation?" I asked. "Or would it feel more appropriate for you to speak with her privately first?" "I think I need to speak with her privately initially," Elena said, "though I'd appreciate you being available afterward once she's had time to process the initial information." Careful planning for Sophia's reaction would prove necessary sooner than either of us expected, as circumstances forced this important family conversation before Elena had fully prepared her approach. Exactly 1 week after that candlelit dinner, Sophia arrived again without warning, finding Elena and me sharing coffee on the back porch, comfortable enough in our newly acknowledged relationship that we hadn't specifically planned around avoiding her potential visits. "Mom," Sophia said, stopping short upon finding us together, her expression immediately registering the shifted dynamic between Elena and me. "Is something happening here that I should know about?" A brief glance at me from Elena, apparently deciding this unexpected moment required directness rather than continued careful planning. "Sophia, please sit down," Elena said. "I think it's time we talked properly about Daniel and me." That direct conversation with Sophia would reveal exactly how significantly her initial skepticism had actually been rooted in protective love for her mother, love requiring careful, honest handling before real family acceptance could develop. "You're actually together?" Sophia asked, her tone carrying complicated emotion rather than simple hostility. "Like, officially dating?" "We're exploring something serious," Elena said carefully. "I understand this feels sudden from your perspective, though it's developed gradually over several months of genuine friendship first." "Dad's only been gone 2 years," Sophia said, hurt visible in her voice. "Doesn't that feel too soon?" "I don't think grief operates on predetermined timelines," Elena said gently. "I still love and miss your father completely. This doesn't erase that love. It's simply acknowledging that I'm also ready to build something new alongside continuing to honor his memory." That explanation, balancing continued grief with real openness toward new happiness, would ultimately give Sophia exactly the framework she needed to begin processing her own complicated feelings. "I need time," Sophia admitted, tears forming despite her attempt at composure. "This isn't about disliking Daniel specifically. It's about processing watching you move forward in a way that feels like it's happening faster than I'm ready for." "Take whatever time you need," Elena said. "I'm not asking for immediate acceptance. I just needed you to know honestly rather than discovering pieces gradually through awkward accidental encounters." Shortly after, Sophia left, her departure carrying less hostility than her initial reaction had suggested, replaced instead by the quieter weight of processing her mother's evolving life. "That went better than I expected," I said, once Sophia had gone. "Better, though still genuinely difficult," Elena agreed. "I think she needs time, but I also think she'll eventually find her way toward acceptance." Slowly, our new relationship found its footing while Sophia worked through her complicated feelings, occasional stilted phone calls between mother and daughter evolving into more comfortable conversation as weeks passed. "Sophia mentioned she'd like to have dinner with both of us," Elena told me, about 5 weeks after that initial difficult conversation. "She said she's ready to actually get to know you properly rather than just processing abstract feelings about our relationship." Sophia's invitation would provide the next real test of our relationship's ability to handle complicated family dynamics, revealing whether acceptance was actually achievable given everything initially difficult about our situation. A neutral restaurant rather than Elena's townhouse, both Elena and I hoping unfamiliar territory might ease whatever residual tension remained from Sophia's earlier reaction. "Thank you for agreeing to this," Sophia said, once we'd settled at our table. "I know I wasn't exactly welcoming when I initially learned about your relationship. I understood your reaction," I said honestly. "Protecting your mother's well-being after everything she's survived is completely reasonable, even if that protectiveness initially felt uncomfortable for me personally." "I've been thinking a lot these past weeks," Sophia continued, "about why exactly this felt so threatening initially beyond simply the timeline feeling rushed." Sophia's reflection revealed a deeper layer to her earlier resistance, one that would help all three of us understand the real complexity of her initial reaction beyond simple timeline concerns. "What did you figure out?" Elena asked gently. "Part of me was scared that accepting your happiness with someone else meant somehow diminishing Dad's significance," Sophia admitted. "Like your love for Daniel would somehow erase or replace what you shared with him." "That's completely understandable," Elena said. "Though I hope you can eventually see that isn't how love actually works. My feelings for Daniel don't erase or diminish anything I shared with your father. They exist alongside that history, not in competition with it." "I think I'm starting to understand that," Sophia said, tears forming, though this time carrying relief rather than earlier distress. "Watching you these past few weeks, you seem genuinely happier than you have in years. I don't want my own fear to prevent you from that happiness." Sophia's acknowledgement marked real progress toward authentic family acceptance. progress that would deepen considerably over the following months as she witnessed firsthand how Elena and I supported each other. Considerably more comfortably the dinner continued after that exchange, Sophia gradually asking real questions about my life, my career, my divorce, building the kind of authentic understanding that would eventually transform her initial skepticism into warmth. "I need to ask you something directly," Sophia said, near the end of dinner. "What are your intentions with my mother?" Genuinely, not just polite reassurance. Recognizing the weight of that question despite the evening's generally warmer trajectory, I answered carefully. "I intend to build something lasting," I said. "I've watched your mother navigate grief with remarkable strength, watched her cook incredible meals with the same care she apparently brings to everything that matters in her life, watched her worry about your reaction while still remaining honest about her own needs. I don't take any of that lightly." That honest answer seemed to provide exactly the reassurance Sophia needed, her expression softening as she processed my real commitment to her mother's well-being. "Okay," Sophia said finally, something releasing in her posture. "I think I can work toward genuinely supporting this rather than just tolerating it." "That means enormously to both of us," Elena said, reaching for her daughter's hand across the table. Months of family dinners followed, Sophia's initial skepticism gradually transforming into real warmth, small moments of authentic connection building between her and me, independent of my relationship with her mother. Growing family acceptance provided exactly the stable foundation our relationship needed, though one final important test awaited, connected directly to Marco's memory and how genuinely we could honor his significance while building our own future together. Around the 6-month mark, Elena suggested visiting Marco's grave together, an invitation carrying real weight given everything it represented about her comfort integrating our relationship with her continued grief. "Are you certain you want me there?" I asked, genuinely uncertain about the appropriateness of accompanying her to something this personally meaningful. "I want you there," Elena said firmly. "I think it's important you understand that piece of my history directly, rather than simply hearing about it secondhand." A quiet Sunday morning at Marco's simple headstone, Elena kneeling to arrange fresh flowers with the same careful attention she brought to everything meaningful in her life. "Marco," she said quietly, "I want you to know about Daniel. I think you'd actually like him, honestly. He's steady, kind, the kind of person who shows up consistently, rather than just when convenient." Watching her speak so openly to Marco's memory, without any visible discomfort about my presence, taught me something important about the kind of woman Elena genuinely was. Someone capable of honoring past love while remaining fully open to new happiness. That cemetery visit marked a real turning point in our relationship's development, providing exactly the integration between past and present that both of us needed for lasting commitment. "Thank you for bringing me," I said as we walked back toward the car afterward. "Thank you for coming," Elena said. "I think Marco would have genuinely appreciated seeing me build something real again, rather than remaining permanently stuck in grief." "I don't think anyone who truly loved you would want you permanently unhappy," I said. "I'm learning to believe that more completely," Elena said, though it took considerable time and therapy to actually internalize that belief rather than just intellectually understanding it. 9 months in, I began seriously considering our future together, recognizing real readiness to build something permanent despite the relationship's unconventional origins. Growing certainty about our future would ultimately lead toward a meaningful decision, one requiring careful planning given everything unique about our history and the family dynamics we'd worked diligently to navigate successfully. "I've been thinking about something," I told Elena, during one evening about 10 months into our relationship. "About formalizing our commitment to each other given everything we've built together." Elena's eyes carried immediate understanding of my implication. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I think I'm ready to propose," I admitted, "though I wanted to discuss it with you first given your own complicated history and uncertainty about pursuing something this permanent again." "I think I'm ready too," Elena said, tears immediately forming. "Honestly, I've been ready for a while, though I didn't want to pressure you given your own relatively recent divorce." Mutual readiness provided exactly the confidence I needed to begin planning a proposal that would properly honor both our relationship's real meaning and the unconventional path that had led us here. Beforehand, I discussed my intentions carefully with Sophia, wanting her genuine blessing rather than simply informing her after the fact, given how much her acceptance had come to matter throughout our relationship's development. "I'm planning to propose to your mother," I told Sophia, during a private conversation about 2 weeks before my planned proposal. "I wanted your honest reaction before moving forward with something this important." Sophia's expression carried real emotion, though considerably warmer than her initial reaction to our relationship nearly a year earlier. "I think that's wonderful," she said. "Watching you two together these past months, I don't see any rushed decision or inappropriate replacement for my father. I see two people who've built something authentically real, who happen to have found each other through unusual circumstances." Sophia's blessing provided exactly the family foundation I needed, allowing me to plan with real confidence rather than lingering uncertainty about family acceptance. Her own dining room table, the exact spot where Elena had first asked me to stay a little longer, felt like the only place the proposal could happen. A careful recreation of that meaningful candlelit evening nearly a year after it had originally transformed our friendship into something considerably more permanent. Candles positioned exactly as they'd been that original evening, the same wine we'd shared, even an attempt at recreating elements of the meal Elena had prepared. Everything in its right place. "This feels remarkably familiar," Elena observed as she entered her dining room to find this careful recreation. "It should," I said, smiling despite genuine nervousness. "Do you remember what you said to me at this exact table, nearly a year ago?" That question opened into exactly the emotional callback I'd hoped for, transforming Elena's expression from curiosity into overwhelmed recognition of the moment's real meaning. Her hand rose to her mouth, clearly remembering. "I asked you to stay a little longer." "Exactly," I said, kneeling beside the table where she'd settled. 4 words that neither of us understood yet would end up meaning absolutely everything that followed. From my pocket, the ring. "Elena Marchetti," I said. "I don't want to simply stay a little longer anymore. I want to stay permanently, building this life together completely. Will you marry me?" Her hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming freely. "Yes," she said, barely above a whisper. "Yes, obviously yes." Delivered in the exact location where our relationship's true transformation had first occurred, the proposal created a full-circle moment that honored both our unconventional beginning and the lasting commitment we'd built together. From the next room where she'd been waiting, Sophia burst in immediately afterward, wrapping both of us in an enthusiastic embrace. "I'm so happy for you both," she said, tears streaming down her own face. "Dad would be genuinely happy too, Mom. I really believe that now." "Thank you for saying that," Elena said, embracing her daughter tightly. "That means more than you probably realize." We married that following spring, at the same townhouse where our story had actually begun, Sophia standing proudly as maid of honor beside her mother. Sometimes the person meant for you is simply next door, waiting for you to notice. If this moved you, tell me where you're watching from tonight, and subscribe for more.